What if I told you that every major crisis in history, world wars, depressions, revolutions, collapses, follows the same repeating pattern? A pattern so precise, so consistent, that it returns almost every 80 years. It happened in the 1700s. It happened in the 1800s. It happened in the 1900s. And now, in the 2020s, we are entering the next phase of the cycle. The question is not if the crisis returns. The question is, how big will it be this time? In this documentary, we will uncover the 80-year cycle, the hidden pattern that explains why every generation faces a massive crisis, a war, a financial collapse, a political revolution, or a complete shift in global power. We'll look at the past 300 years, connect the dots, and reveal why historians and economists believe the next great turning point is happening right now. By the end of this video, you will understand the cycle, the warning signs, and what the next decade may bring. This is not prophecy. This is history repeating itself. Right on schedule. To understand the 80-year cycle, we must go back in time, because history has already given us 3 clear examples. 3 cycles. 3 turning points, each separated by roughly 70 to 90 years. And each one reshaped the world. Let's begin. The first cycle, the 1770s. Revolutions and the birth of nations. The 1770s were a time of unrest. People felt exploited. Governments were drowning in debt. Taxes were rising. Society was divided. And then, everything broke. In America, the colonies rebelled against the British Empire. A full-scale revolution began. Monarchies across Europe felt the shockwaves just a few years later. France reached its breaking point. The French Revolution exploded, ending centuries of royal rule. 2 massive revolutions, 2 collapsing systems, 2 new worlds emerging. This was the first great turning. The second cycle, the 1860s. Civil War and industrial transformation about 80 to 90 years later. The world hit another breaking point, the 1860s. In America, tension over slavery, economics, and political power split the nation in 2. The Civil War became the bloodiest conflict in U.S. history. In Europe, revolutions spread across Italy and Germany. Empires fell. New nations rose. Industry exploded. Railroads, factories, steel. The modern world was born through chaos. Once again, an old system died, and a new one took its place. This was the second great turning. The third cycle, the 1940s. World War and global reset. 80 years later, the world entered its darkest chapter. The 1940s. The Great Depression had crushed economies. Fascism was rising. Countries were divided and desperate. Then, the global system snapped. World War II erupted. It became the deadliest war in human history. Empires collapsed. The world map changed forever. But from the ashes, a new order was born. The United Nations, the World Bank, Bretton Woods. The US dollar is the global currency, a new era of global cooperation. The old world died in war. A new world was designed in peace. This was the third great turning. 3 cycles, 3 crises, 3 resets. 1770s, Revolution 1860s, Civil War and Industrial Shock, 1940s World War, and Global Reset, each one separated by roughly 80 years. Each one reshaped the world. Each one followed the same pattern. Rising tension, growing debt, political division, economic stress, a final breaking point, and then a complete reset. And now it has been about 80 years since the last great turning of the 1940s. Which brings us to today. Every 80 years, societies move through the same 4 stages. Different countries, different cultures, different leaders. But the pattern stays the same. It's not magic. It's not prophecy. It's human behavior repeating itself. Let's break down the cycle. Stage by stage. Stage 1. This stage begins right after a major crisis ends. People are exhausted from war. Governments rebuild. Societies unite. Economies restart. Trust rises. The 1950s are a perfect example. The world rebuilt after World War II. Nations cooperated. The global economy grew. The middle class expanded. This is the calm after the storm. The world feels stable, predictable, hopeful, but this unity never lasts. Stage 2, a new generation grows up in peace and begins to challenge the system their parents built. They say, "We want freedom, not control. We want identity, not conformity. We want change." This creates tension. In the 1960s and 70s, civil rights movements, cultural revolutions, anti-war protest shifts in values. People weren't fighting a war, they were fighting ideas. Society begins to split, but not yet break. Stage 3, this is when the cycle becomes dangerous. Institutions weaken, polarization grows, trust disappears, debt rises, the economy becomes unstable. People stop believing in the system. Sound familiar? The last 20 to 30 years showed these signs. Political division, economic inequality, rising national debt, social fragmentation, declining faith in governments, culture wars everywhere during the unraveling. Everyone senses something is wrong, but no one agrees on the solution. This stage always leads to the final one. Stage 4, every 80 years. The system reaches a point where it can no longer hold together. The crisis can be a major war, a revolution, a financial collapse, or a complete political restructuring. In the past, 1770s, Revolution 1860, Civil War 1940s. World War. Each crisis reshaped the global order. Each crisis created a new system. Each crisis reset the cycle. And now, the world is entering this stage again. Debt is exploding. Division is rising. Institutions are weakening. Trust is collapsing. Global power is shifting. The 2020s are beginning to look very similar to the late 1930s, and the cycle points to a major turning point around the mid to late 2020s. The pattern is clear. Stage 1, unity. Stage 2, awakening. Stage 3, unraveling. Stage 4, crises, reset. We are no longer in stage 1. We are long past stage 2. We are deep into stage 3 and moving closer to stage 4. History does not repeat perfectly, but it repeats in patterns. And today, the world is showing the same signals that appeared before every major turning point in the last 300 years. Let's connect the cycle to what is happening right now. Rising debt. Every great crisis in history began when governments reached unsustainable levels of debt. In the 1770s, Britain's war debt sparked rebellion. In the 1860s, U.S. debt ballooned before the Civil War. In the 1940s, global debt exploded during World War II. Today, global debt has reached the highest level in all of human history. Countries are paying billions just to service interest. This is the classic warning that the cycle is entering its crisis stage. Political division and cultural polarization before every major crisis. Society becomes deeply divided. In the 1770s, colonists versus the crown. In the 1860s, North versus South. In the 1930s, democracies versus rising extremism. Today, right versus left, young versus old, rich versus poor, urban versus rural, nationalism versus globalization. Every nation feels this pressure. People are no longer united. They live in different realities, with different truths. This level of division only appears at the end of the cycle. Declining trust in institutions before the American Revolution. People lost faith in monarchs. Before the Civil War, trust in the government collapsed. Before World War II, institutions across Europe failed. Today, people distrust their governments Media is losing credibility, banks feel unstable, corporations feel too powerful, social systems feel broken. When trust collapses, the system becomes fragile, and a fragile system cannot survive the next shock. Economic strain on the middle-class history is clear. The cycle reaches its breaking point when ordinary people can no longer sustain the system. In the 1770s, crushing taxes in the 1860s, failing farms, plus rapid industrial change. In the 1930s, unemployment plus depression. Today, rising cost of living, low wage growth, housing becoming unaffordable, inflation eating savings, younger generations losing hope when the middle class weakens. The old system loses its foundation. This is exactly what happens before every 80-year crisis. Global power shifts. Every 80-year crisis leads to a new global order. The 1770s gives the United States rises. The 1860s gives America, becomes industrial power. The 1940 South U.S. leads the world after World War II. Today, we see China rising. BRICS expanding dollar dominance, challenged alliances, shifting new trade systems, forming the global balance is moving. And every major shift in history was followed by a crisis, and then a reset. This suggests we are near the end of the current order, and the beginning of something new. The signs are clear: debt rising, division growing, trusts falling, middle class struggling, global power shifting. These are not random events. They are the exact conditions that appeared before the 1770s, the 1860s, and the 1940s. Once again, the 80-year cycle is turning, and the world is moving toward its next great crisis. Tension building. This is the moment where the 80-year cycle becomes dangerous, because once a society enters the final stage, the crisis stage, events don't slow down. They accelerate, slowly, then suddenly. And today, the world is seeing the same pressure points that appeared before every major turning in history. Let's look at them one by one. Debt is reaching a breaking point. Global debt is growing faster than the global economy. Governments are borrowing just to pay interest on old debt. This is exactly what happened before the American Revolution, before the Civil War, before World War II. When debt becomes unmanageable, the system breaks. And today, that moment is approaching faster than expected. This is where everything starts to fall apart. Inflation and currency weakness before the 1770s. British currency lost trust. Before the 1860s, America faced financial instability. Before the 1940s, Germany, Britain, France, all faced inflation shocks. Today, rising prices, shrinking savings, weaker currencies in many countries. Governments printing money to survive whenever a currency loses stability. The crisis stage is near. Social division is at a breaking point. No major crisis ever starts from unity. It starts when people stop trusting each other. Before the 1770s, colonists versus empire. Before the 1860s, North versus South. Before the 1930s, 40 Segundas, world divided into extremes. Today, political polarization, cultural battles, economic inequality, information wars, collapsing social trust. The world is becoming more divided, more angry, more uncertain. A divided society is vulnerable. This is exactly how past cycles entered crises. Technology is creating unpredictable disruption. Every crisis brings new technology. Industrial machines in the 1860s, nuclear power in the 1940s. Today, the disruption is faster. AI automation, digital currencies, surveillance systems, deepfake manipulation. Cyber warfare technology is transforming power, money, and society far faster than governments can adapt. Whenever the world changes faster than institutions, a major shock follows. Global tensions are increasing before every crisis. Rival nations challenge the old order. 1770s. America challenged Britain. 1860s. Global powers shifted with new nations. 1940 segundos. Germany. Japan challenged world order. Today, U.S. versus China, Russia versus West, BRICS versus dollar dominance, Middle East tensions. Shifting alliances. History is repeating the same pattern. Global tension, economic pressure, breaking point. This is how crises begin. The system is becoming too heavy to support. Every 80-year cycle ends when the old system becomes too expensive, too slow, too divided, and too fragile. to survive. Today, social programs cost more, healthcare costs more, defense costs more, interest payments cost more, economic growth is slowing, the weight is increasing. But the strength of the system is not. This is the moment in history where small shocks can trigger massive consequences. Because once a system becomes fragile, one event can start the avalanche. The pressure is rising, debt rising, trust falling, division growing, tensions increasing, currencies weakening, institutions failing. These are not random problems. These are the classic signs that the world is entering the crisis stage of the 80-year cycle. And the deeper we go, the harder it becomes to avoid what comes next. Future scenarios. If the ATR cycle is truly repeating, then the next decade could reshape the world in ways we haven't seen since the 1940s. History doesn't tell us exactly what'll happen, but it gives us clear patterns. Patterns that point to 3 possible futures. Let's explore them. Scenario 1, the soft crisis. In this scenario, governments don't ignore the warning signs. They faced them. They reduce spending. They restructure debt. They rebuild trust in institutions. They reform taxes and social systems. They control inflation. The crisis still happens, but it's smaller. There may be a mild recession, political reforms, new economic rules, a gradual shift in global power. This is the best-case crisis. Painful, but manageable. History shows it's possible, but rare. Scenario 2, the major crisis. This is the scenario that matches most 80-year turning points. A major crisis emerges, not from one event, but from many small problems hitting at once. A debt shock, a currency crisis, a major conflict, a global recession, supply chain collapse, political breakdown, the 1770s. The 1860 segundos. The 1940s. All followed this pattern. This scenario leads to the old system breaking. A new financial order, new leadership, new alliances, new rules for money and debt. It's disruptive. It's unpredictable. It's historic. But it's also how new eras begin. Scenario 3, the global power shift. Every 80-year crisis resets who runs the world. After the 1770s gives America, emerges after the 1860s, gives the US, becomes industrial superpower after the 1940s, gives US leads. Global order. Now the pattern suggests another power shift may be coming. Possibilities. China becomes the world's largest economy. BRICS creates a new financial system. The dollar loses some of its dominance. New trade networks form multiple superpowers instead of one digital currencies. Challenge old money. This doesn't mean collapse. It means transformation. The world after the crisis will not look like the world before it. Which scenario is most likely? History suggests this. The soft crisis is the least common. The major crisis is the most common. The global power shift almost always happens because every crisis creates a new leader, a new system, and a new world order. We are living in the final stages of the old cycle and the early stages of the new one. What sparks the crisis? In past cycles, the spark was revolution, civil conflict, world war, financial collapse. Today, the spark could be a debt failure, a currency crisis, a geopolitical conflict, a banking meltdown, a technological shock, or something unexpected. The spark is unpredictable. The cycle is not. What matters is the pressure. And the pressure is rising everywhere. History does not move in straight lines. It moves in cycles. Every 80 years, an old world begins to fade, and a new one begins to rise. In the 1770s, the world saw revolutions that created new nations. In the 1860s, the world faced civil wars and industrial transformation. In the 1940s, the world endured the most destructive conflict in human history and then rebuilt a new global order. And now, almost exactly 80 years later, we are once again standing at the edge of another great turning. Debt is rising, trust is falling, societies are dividing, power is shifting. Technology is accelerating, and the global system is becoming too heavy to carry. These are not random events. They are the same signals that appeared before every major historical reset. The ATIA cycle is turning again, and we are living inside its most critical decade. But here is the most important truth. Crises does not only destroy, it also creates. Every collapse opens the door for a new beginning. A new system, a new generation of leaders, a new understanding of how the world should work. The future is not fixed, it's being shaped right now. By the choices nations make, by the ideas people believe, and by how we respond to the pressures building around us. So here's a question that history asks all of us. When the next great turning arrives, will we repeat the mistakes of the past, or will we build something better? Thank you for watching. For more cinematic stories about money, power, and the hidden patterns shaping our world, subscribe to Mindshift Economy. The next chapter of history is already beginning.